Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Indiana State Police Roadshow. I'm your host, Sergeant John Perrine, the Public Information Officer for the Indiana State Police Indianapolis District. The Roadshow is brought to you each and every week by the Indiana State Police Alliance and Cops for Kids, a subsidiary of the State Police Alliance. For more information about our sponsor, visit www.indianasfinest.com. We want to thank the man behind the camera making us look good today is Mr. Tom Trial, as always. You know, he does the best he can, Ron, to make us look good.
You know, there's a lot of work that goes into it.
He may do a lot of editing, but he puts us on YouTube. Check out the Indiana State Police YouTube channel. Really easy to find. Get on YouTube, type in Indiana State Police. You will find a lot of stuff that could keep you busy for a very long time, from current stuff to some of our historical videos as well. Really, really cool stuff on the Indiana State Police YouTube channel. Guests in the studio today, Captain Ron Galvez, the Chief PIO for the Indiana State Police from headquarters.
Hi, John. Thanks for having me.
Always a pleasure to have you, and certainly a pleasure to have our next guest, and that is the Collections Manager for the Indiana State Police Museum, Shelley Trial.
Thank you for having me, John. It's nice to be here.
I'm so happy to have you here because, you know, you're so much more to us than the Collections Manager, certainly because of your background, but we want to talk about this Indiana State Police Museum, some of the exciting things that have happened or about to happen, and some of the ideas you have.
Well, I appreciate you. Thanks for having me on today. I'm glad to be at the Indiana State Police Museum. Every day is sort of what I call a journey of discovery. Every day I learn something new. I find something new. One of the things that we're doing is looking at what we have in our exhibits and how we can enhance them, how we can add to them, how we can rotate them around. And one of the really interesting things that we've been doing is looking in our what we call our upstairs, where we have collections stored right now that aren't open to the public, and we're finding some really interesting things.
Yeah, I think you just showed me a pair of boots the other day that were they were literally, I mean, what's the word to put it into leather? Like manuscript or whatever.
Stamped
into the boot, the trooper's name. And you were able to research that name and found some cool things about it.
We did upstairs, and I have to credit Tom Trial and Linda
You
Brummett
know this guy, right?
and Kathy Alderton, yes, with the State Police in helping us do some discovery. So we have several pairs of boots upstairs, and we have 4 pairs, and the names are stamped in them. And so as we were looking at them, there was no additional paperwork, so we took the names and we started doing some research. For one of them, his name was Marcellus Tim. It might be Timmy. It's spelled Timme. We found out that he was one of the first troopers, and he had come on in 1937. So he would have been issued a motorcycle. And as we sort of started to go into the search of this, we found that he was also the very first Indiana State Trooper to receive the campaign hat. So when the State Police first started, they wore garrison hats. Yeah. And in July 1st of 1941, we have a photo of him receiving the very first campaign hat, which is the hat that troopers wear still today. So we kind of kept digging and found out that he retired in 1962, so he served for 25 years. Because he was on the agency in 1960, that's when they began issuing PE numbers. His PE number is 62. He retired in 62. We learned through, with the help of HR, that he retired as an investigator from headquarters, and we're just doing some additional digging to find out a little bit more about who this individual is, because we want to tell more stories at the museum, not just about the things that we have, but about the people. And that's my focus right now. That's kind of my priority, is to try to tell the stories of the faces of the place, the people who served. And who knows what we'll continue to uncover, all this from the names in boots.
You know, and it's pretty awesome, too, because with the volunteer group that we have, they're tasked with cataloging, identifying, scanning, and preserving the photo collection that we have. And right now it's at 21,000 photos and growing. I mean, there are boxes and boxes, but yesterday Shelley came to me and said, oh my gosh, look at this. Here's a group photo from probably 1937, 38 with this trooper in formation wearing those boots with the garrison hat. So before he had the campaign hat, but again, like a kid in a candy store, she came running over. Said, "Oh my gosh, look at what we found! Found this picture, and here's where it was taken." And I think you sent me 2 additional photos, individual photos of of this trooper.
Yes.
And
yes.
so, but again, like she said, every day it's a journey of discovery, because there's so much there that really just scratching the surface.
And, that's one of the reasons why I think it's so important to preserve our history, because, 50, 60, or 100 years from now, somebody's going to be looking back on the stuff we're doing right now with the same excitement that we have when we learn about what they were doing. Right. And it's really neat. Our uniforms were very similar, if not almost identical to the way they've always been. But you mentioned the volunteers, and I want to give these guys some credit, because they put in so much work and they're so good at what they do. So I can't name them all off the top of my head, but I know we've got Rick Hammer, Steve Knapp, John Kelly,
Jim Hollingsworth,
and Chuck Poy, who wasn't a trooper, but he's our expert in cars.
Okay.
And without those volunteers, I don't think we could function. Right. They are essential.
And those are familiar names to a lot of people, because at least I know Rick Hammer and Steve Knapp spent most of their adult life working for the Indiana State Police. Both of them 40 plus years.
And Jim Hollingsworth is a retired colonel, so he was the number 2 guy. So he was in that position when I first came on.
Oh, cool.
Or at least on the executive staff when I first came on in '93.
So these volunteers are very beneficial, because they've been around the department a long time, but they can look at these photos, and not, if they don't know the person, they probably know somebody that does. And so that's so valuable, because you have stacks and stacks of photos that are yet to be identified.
We have stacks and stacks of photos. We have tons of negatives. We have lots of documents. We have past copies of the shield, which I believe the shield, I'm still doing research on that. I believe the shield was an internal document that was circulated around to the different districts. We're talking, the 40s and 50s when communications were a little bit different. These things are fascinating, absolutely fascinating.
So one thing that I think is neat at the museum is you guys at the museum catalog names and put pictures with names. So if somebody out there has a grandfather, an uncle, a father that was a trooper years ago, and you're like, I'd like to see some pictures or some information, they can come to the museum, and if we have it, you have access to it, and they can see it, correct?
Well, right now we're trying to sort of figure out how that access works. But for example, we had a request from the Shuttle family. Superintendent Shuttle passed away recently, and his family reached out and asked if we had photos that they could use in their memorial service. And so all the volunteers and Ron and I, we went through our digital archives, and we were able to find photos with Superintendent Shuttle in that. And then we were able to go ahead and digitally send to the families the photos, so they could go ahead and put them in a loop, a video loop that they used at a memorial service. And we were very, very, I think, happy to be able to provide that service to the family.
And we'd love to have people stop by that want to talk to us about their family member that was a trooper 50, 60 years ago. And we want to hear the stories. And if you have some memorabilia, maybe you can show that to us or share it or let us borrow it, whatever it may be. But those are the types of things our museum are looking for. But if the general public wants to come in the museum, what are the hours, and what can they expect if they stop by?
We're open Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. And we're closed on Monday and Friday, so we can work on exhibits and do research and that type of thing. But we are happy to have anybody come in. If anyone would like a tour, reach out and request a tour. The reason we ask you to do that is just to make sure that someone is available, so we can go ahead and offer a tour through the facility. If anyone would like to also meet with a state trooper, we want to make sure that we can potentially provide that access and have a trooper available to either be part of the tour or talk to the children or adults after the tour is given. So yes, we are happy to have people come to the museum.
And the one thing I really enjoy about doing that, especially if they're a little bit older group, say middle school on up through adult. And the only reason I say this is because we have a conference room, and we can bring them all in, have them sit down for a while, and we can actually have a really good back and forth conversation. So we use it too as part of a recruiting tool. But again, that museum is a living history of where we came from, who we are now, and where we're going. And so to be able to share that with the general public, in a very personal way, I think it's invaluable. And I don't think people get an opportunity to interact with a law enforcement agency or personnel in that manner, on a daily basis. So I think it's a very special opportunity that we have to provide for the general public.
Yeah, so if you have a church youth group or a daycare or a high school teacher, middle school teacher, and you're looking for a field trip in the Indianapolis area, you can arrange that.
That's true. That's true. We have a scavenger hunt, so you can pick up a sheet and go around the museum and see if you can find everything that's required to complete the scavenger hunt. We have lots of pictures. We have lots of materials. One of our prize artifacts is an original 1937 Indian motorcycle. And we have kind of getting back to Marcellus Tim, who was one of our first motorcycle troopers. We have an original leather jacket that was worn by a trooper, and it's a really interesting story. If you don't mind, I can tell the story about the motorcycle. Yeah. So, back when the Indiana State Police first began, it was far less expensive to buy motorcycles than it was cars. So troopers were issued motorcycles, but remember, this is Indiana, and you're 12 months a year on a motorcycle, and it would get pretty desperate if you're on the roads. And it's not like there was a lot of really warm clothing that they could wear, so troopers would wear leather jackets and stuff newspapers down them to cut the wind and try to keep them a little bit warmer, if that's even possible in January. But when they were eventually given vehicles, they sold the motorcycles, and troopers were either issued Indians or Harley Davidsons, and they sold the motorcycles for $10 a piece.
Oh my goodness!
So it was back in the 80s, and this motorcycle, which had been painted red and was dusty and rusted in a Morgan County garage, was discovered. Due diligence was done, and it was discovered to have been an originally issued Indiana State Police motorcycle. And so troopers collected money. They had it completely redone, and it's painted in its original fashion. It has a siren on it, and I always like to ask people if they can find it, because it's not in its typical, I guess, location for a siren. Yeah. But it's just a really, really interesting artifact, and I think it's an important part of the Indiana State Police history.
Very cool. Well, the museum is a very exciting place, and we're very thankful to have Shelley. And Ron and I touched on it briefly, but your background is so beneficial to us, not just your passion for preserving the history and discovering these stories, but your ability to communicate. And Ron and I lean on you often for some help and some advice. But I want to give people a background a little bit about where you come from. And I know that's not why you're here, but it's very impressive. So just give us a bio of where you started and how you got to where you are. We got about 2 minutes, plenty of time.
Yeah, plenty of time. I'm very fortunate in that when I was a kid, I wanted to be in journalism, and I was able to do that. Went to Purdue. I majored in radio, television, public relations, and journalism, which at the time were separate majors. And throughout my career, I started as a newspaper reporter for Gannett. I worked as a radio news director. I spent many years in television, most of it in television news management. I have worked I've worked as a consultant, a full-time consultant, doing a lot of crisis work. I've worked for Mitch Daniels at Purdue University and Mike Pence when he was the governor. I did some advance for Mike Pence when he was the vice president. I've worked for the ports of Indiana, and I've done a lot of things that involve communication, whether it's outward-facing or inward-facing, communicating with internal audiences, which is very important. But I've been very, very fortunate to have the background I have, and I've been very fortunate to land at the Indiana State Police and work for an organization that I really believe in.
Well, I think I can speak for the entire department, from the superintendent on down, how fortunate we feel to have both you and Tom Shelley Trial, Tom Trial, because they bring so much to our department, and they're so valuable. And we're so thankful for you to be here.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you.
And you can tell the experience that she has, because she has an opportunity on a daily basis when the museum's open to talk to a multitude of people, and all different ages and what have you. And just listening to her, how she communicates and how she tells our story, it's really pretty neat to listen to it, because just the way that it rolls off her tongue, it's just like she wrote the history herself. It's really pretty. It's really pretty special.
So you can find the Indiana State Police Museum on 21st Street, just west of Post Road, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday during the day. If there's a time that you want to bring your organization and it doesn't fit in any of those days, just reach out and we can make it happen. We're very flexible. We have people with access. So thank you to our guests, Shelley Trial and Captain Ron Galavez.
Thank you.
Certainly appreciate all of you tuning in. Stop by, visit the Indiana State Police Museum. You can also find them on Facebook. Everybody take care, buckle up, and drive safely.